So in my opinion, I think King Riku needed to reevaluate his ideals and some of the things he lives by after this week's episode of One Piece. I definitely feel as though the way he was living while he was trying to be benevolent, ultimately look what happened. He ended up getting fucked over, Doflamingo did him in, and now his people despise him and look at him like he's scum. I started watching this series called The Three Kingdoms. It's a live-action Chinese series based on Chinese history and whatnot. And there's this guy called Cao Cao, and I know this is kind of like, whoa, what the fuck, where is this coming from? But ultimately, he said a quote that I felt really resonated with me, and I feel is definitely a powerful quote. And that quote is, "I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me." Powerful stuff there. So with this week's episode of One Piece, it continues the massacre of King Riku. I couldn't help but kind of chuckle a couple times at the exaggerated as fuck expression. Some of it I was like, damn, that's kind of fucked up. But it was just like a lot of the times the way he was going, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. And a lot of the episode was that, like, I felt the first half of the episode, it was giving a little bit more of a good idea and understanding of just why the people truly hate King Riku, because he was just stabbing. And of course, obviously, he was being controlled by Doflamingo, but it was really giving a better look at what was done to Dressrosa and why the people look at him like he's scum. So in that aspect, the anime succeeded in making it look a little bit more like, yeah, this is why they look at King Riku like he's a fucking asshole, because he was just, Doflamingo made him out to be this worthless piece of shit, and then came in at the right time like, we're superheroes now, we're here to save you guys from this evil King Riku or whatever. And surprisingly, nobody will ask questions like, hey, how did you know what was going on? Where did you come from, right? That's the people, though. And then ultimately going into after that, it was kind of like, that was the good bits of the episode, and then afterward, it was like, we got a little 2-minute scene or whatever, Rebecca fighting more fodder, which I was like, no. And then ultimately seeing the aftermath of the events of what happened in the past with King Riku and how he slaughtered everybody. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you really look at it, a lot of this just spells out exactly how much of a mastermind Doflamingo is, because let's take into account all that he did to conquer Dressrosa. And again, I know I keep going back on this, but this is exactly why Doflamingo was able to conquer Dressrosa and Crocodile couldn't do that with Alabasta. He went in there, he threatened him. He said, yo, you tell the people about my existence, it's going to be blood. So he was hiding in the shadows. Then he had him do all these fucked up things that people would see, like, he wants all our money, but we still trust him. And then came and controlled him and made him look like a fucking savage beast. So he made him look like the bad guy, came in and made himself look like the hero, and then to wash away any evidence, used sugar, which, by the way, his team, getting to see a full picture of his team, Doflamingo's team goes strong. He gets to fucking basically have all these people there doing different things, and he was using one of his people to turn them into toys to wash away the evidence. It's like this man did everything possible, and that's why he was able to do what Crocodile couldn't. A lot of people like to compare this arc to, Alabasta, but I feel that the one thing that Doflamingo did was he planned extensively to every last detail, and he's more cunning and conniving. He made more of a name for himself where people wouldn't want to fuck with him after what he's doing. Getting to see that young Viola, I was like, ooh, girl, like even young. But Monet, getting to see Monet as well again, it was like, I like some of those events as well. I felt it was a nice little cameo treat. But as a whole, from I'd say the midpoint on after the flashback, which again, it was just mainly giving further exposition as to the situation that we're in and, the thoughts of the people and whatnot. Ultimately, it was just a lot of like, oh, the Tontata's reaction and how they feel about this. And, just a lot of like, oh, now everyone's toys, and seeing Frankie cry on the floor and shit like that. So it was an all right, average type of episode. I felt it was like there were some good bits again, but ultimately as a whole, I was just like, I mean, in the main timeline, the biggest piece of progression that we really got was that seemingly Luffy is getting close to Zoro and his people and whatnot. I think he was like either about to meet up with them or just, met up with them and whatnot. So we got a little bit of that. Some of the people like Don Chinjabli were about to get turned into toys or got turned into toys. So we got a little bit of advancement with that. But as a whole, the main timeline, still for the most part at a standstill. Rebecca's still fighting fodder. Oh my gosh. So yeah, just really the best part was the backstory of what happened at Dressrosa. But aside from that, average episode. I'm going to give this one a 5.5 out of 10. There was some decent bits, but as a whole, not that much progression. Also, what the fuck was up with that red filter? Like, it worked for some of the flashback, but having that red filter over the entire flashback, it was kind of like, it was just weird. At a certain point, I was just kind of like, okay, you can take the red filter off now. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think about the backstory, what happened at Dressrosa? Also, how you feel about Viola kind of getting roped into all this? I mean, Doflamingo even that cruel to like, all right, I'll make a deal with you. I won't kill your father. He's going to be like, you know, a ghost in here. He's going to be a bitch or whatever, but I'll, you know, leave him and spare him if you work for me. So even further exploring the cruelties of Doflamingo and also the bravery of Viola. I mean, props to her for dealing with what she had to deal with. I feel between her and Rebecca, she triumphed. Like, she's still strong. She's a strong woman and everything. And I guess that's due to age as well. But Rebecca is like, stop crying, girl. And your overall thoughts of this episode, what do you think as a whole? But that's all I have for this review. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so as well, that would be awesome. I'm Finette World, and as always, people, have an awesome day. So in my opinion, I think King Riku needed to reevaluate his ideals and some of the things he lives by after this week's episode of One Piece. I definitely feel as though the way he was living while he was trying to be benevolent, ultimately look what happened. He ended up getting fucked over. Doflamingo did him in, and now his people despise him and look at him like he's scum. I started watching this series called The Three Kingdoms. It's a live-action Chinese series based on Chinese history and whatnot. And there's this guy called Cao Cao, and I know this is kind of like, whoa, what the fuck, where is this coming from? But ultimately, he said a quote that I felt really resonated with me, and I feel is definitely a powerful quote. And that quote is, I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Powerful stuff there. So with this week's episode of One Piece, it continues the